The man who says that it is morally acceptable to rape little children is just as mistaken as the man who says 2 plus 2 equals 5.
Welcome back, everyone. As Bob the Tomato would say,
have we got a show for you?
At least I think it's going to be a good one. It'll be up for you to decide, I guess. If you don't know, my name is Raphael. I am the host of Small Town Bible Questions YouTube channel, and I answer your Bible questions and help you navigate through this culture through a biblical lens. Now, for this video, we're going to be doing a little debate review that happened about 4 months ago to the time of this recording. And the debate was between Dr. William Lane Craig and Michael Ruse. And those are two prominent figures within the philosophy group. And they did this in the Brian Callen podcast show. Now, if you don't know who Brian Callen is a comedian, an actor. He actually hosts, I think, maybe a couple different podcasts that he does. He's very prominent guy. He's been on Joe Rogan. He's friends with Joe Rogan. And now for William Lane Craig, if you don't know, he's one of my favorite Christian apologists, but he is a theologian, a Christian philosopher, and I believe he teaches at Houston Christian University in philosophy there. And for Dr. Michael Ruse, he's a atheist philosopher who teaches, I believe, Florida State University. And so these are very prominent people within the topic of philosophy. And in that group, if you do any of apologetics and philosophy. So, so we're going to be doing a little debate review. And now this debate, I say debate, but in reality, it was more of a discussion, and I definitely enjoyed it, and it's about an hour long. But what we're gonna be focusing more is the last argument that they cover, because as you guys already know, or if you didn't, I already did the moral argument for the existence of God, which is actually Dr. William Lane Craig's argument that he proposes. So I cover that, and I'll leave a link to a video of it, because in it I cover a lot of the arguments that people give. But one thing that I didn't cover was one of the things that we'll be talking about, a prominent blunder, as I would say, that atheists make when it comes to misunderstanding the argument for the existence of God, that I didn't cover in that video. So I'll leave a link for it, and I'll leave one of those little card note thingies, whatever they're called, that you can click to go to it and listen to it if you haven't yet. Now for this video, it's about, like I said, an hour long, and we're going to be focusing only on the last section of it, which is the moral argument. And I'll make sure I'll leave a link to the actual show so you guys can go and watch it in context fully. So, in case maybe I'm taking something out of context, you can point it out to me. But the moral argument that Dr. William Lane Craig goes over, if you guys don't know it, the syllogism goes like this: if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Objective moral values and duties do exist, therefore God exists. Now that is the argument, the moral argument that Dr. William Lane Craig gave here, that he usually gives, and that they're discussing. Now, regarding the first premise of the argument, most atheist philosophers would agree that if God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. Now, there are some atheist philosophers that would say, like, no, even if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do exist, like Dr. Michael Ruse and others. And I've covered some other arguments that people try to use to ground objective moral values and duties and why it fails. Now, even here, as we'll see, I'll show a clip here how Dr. Michael Ruse agrees that objective moral values and duties do exist, and that they are metaphysically necessary too. So let me just play the clip real quick.
Well, yes, and you said earlier in our conversation, this is a logically necessary truth.
It's one, yes, and I'm prepared to say raping little girls is that it's immoral to do this is a morally objective statement. But of course, don't forget, I think it all comes about because we're social, we have these certain things. But if we thought that they were just subjective, they break down. If I thought, oh, well, being nice to Bill Craig, it goes down well, but I'll pretend to be nice to him. I benefit from that. But by God, he better be nice to me because he believes it objectively. It would break down in a generation. So I don't see any reason why natural selection should not have made us believe raping little girls is wrong, but raping little girls is wrong is an objective fact. Because if we didn't believe that, it wouldn't work.
So there we see, right? Dr. Michael Ruse, and as Craig pointed out, you believe that objective moral values and duties exist, that they're metaphysically necessary. Now, that just simply means that in any possible world that would exist, not that these actual worlds exist like in, like a string theory or multiverse theory or, the multiverse or anything like that, but that if any possible world, these facts would always exist, sort of like 2 + 2 would always have to be 4. A circle could never be square, or things like a bachelor would always be single. So these sort of statements would always be metaphysically necessary, that it would always have to be true. And so he's agreeing that these moral values and duties are just like that, metaphysically necessary, that they would always exist. And so then the question is, then what grounds this truth, that truth of objective moral values? And so that is more of the question that is going on. And so a blunder that here we'll see, as Craig will point out here soon to Dr. Michael Ruse, is a blunder that a lot of atheists make, that they start giving the answer of, oh, this is how we come to know, versus why it is that objective moral values and duties are true, and which those are two distinct things. And I'll just play the clip here where Dr. William Craig points that out to him, and then I'll kind of give a little more of explaining a little bit.
I feel like I've been cast out in the desert. I'm cold. I'm cold in your world, Dr. Ruse. I'm cold.
Look, we've got the same confusion going on here that we had in the argument about the applicability of mathematics. There I emphasize that the question is not the origin of our mathematical knowledge, how we came by the knowledge of these necessary truths of mathematics. Similarly here, the question is not how do we come by the knowledge of these objective moral truths and principles. I'm perfectly willing to accept an evolutionary account or social account of how we come by that knowledge. But this is not an argument about moral epistemology or moral knowledge. It's an argument about the objectivity of moral facts. And I think that Michael and I agree, it sounds like, that there are objective moral truths, such as the one he mentioned. And so the question will be, if God does not exist, what is the foundation? What is the ontological basis for these moral truths and principles that we both want to affirm?
So, again, here Dr. William Lane Craig pointed out to Michael Ruse, which, it's like I said, it's a common mistake that a lot of people make when they're arguing against the moral argument. And that is that they confuse moral ontology with moral epistemology. And all of that really means, when it comes to epistemology, is the study of knowledge and how we come to know certain things, versus ontology, which has to do more with the study of being, or in simpler terms, why it is that something is true. And so the argument for, as Craig pointed out, it's not about how we came to know these moral truths, but more of why it is that these moral truths are objective. What grounds them? On what basis can we say that these are objectively true? And again, it's a common blunder, and it's a common misunderstanding that people give, and that they don't understand when they're talking about the moral argument. Now, after Dr. Craig points out this mistake from Dr. Michael Ruse about how he's confusing moral epistemology, how we come to know something, versus moral ontology of how or why it is that objective moral values and duties are true and like what grounds them, Dr. Michael Ruse seems to sort of start switching gears because, like Craig pointed out, right? You in the previous argument that they went over of like mathematics, he did the same thing, confusing moral epistemology versus ontology, and he did it here again on the moral argument. And after Craig points that out, he sort of switches his stance of, or maybe he didn't really know he's switching sort of his views of objective moral values and duties to a subjective version. Now, he might have thought that they, in his view, are still objective, but I'll point out why it is that it no longer becomes objective, because Craig also points that out to him. So I'll just play this clip.
Hang on, one thing. If you're playing baseball, it's 3 outs or 3 swings and you're out. You're playing cricket, you can keep swinging all day long as they don't, catch you, knock your bails, your wickets down. Now, within baseball, I'm perfectly allowed to say, oh no, you can't go for 4 because it's objectively the case that three pitches and you're out.
Right.
It's within the context of this, and that's what I want to say about that.
Man, so you guys should go watch the whole debate, because one of the reasons I'm snickering and smile is because the faces Dr. Craig makes throughout, not just like in these little points, but like in the earlier points of the discussion, just hilarious. I love him. But so the thing that Dr. Craig here was pointing out, right, is that so Dr. Michael Ruse had agreed that, and I played the clip earlier, how he believes that more objective moral values and duties do exist, and that they are metaphysically necessary, just like 2 + 2 = 4. And then he sort of gives the example of that these morals are objective, just in the same way that the rules of cricket or baseball would be objective. But he is confusing what the definition of objective means. And I even went over this in the video that I had made and cover, the difference between objective and subjective. Subjective, these are based on the opinions of people. Sort of like saying, pineapples don't go on pizza, or strawberry ice cream is the best ice cream. These are opinions. That's all there are, opinions based on the people, right? Versus something that would be objective, that is independent of people's opinions, sort of like 2 + 2 = 4. Even if no humans existed, it would still be true that 2 + 2 = 4. That is just what would be metaphysically necessary, as they had kind of covered earlier, right? So Dr. Michael Ruse then is giving an example of like, these are objective in the same sense as the rules of cricket and baseball. And Dr. Craig points out to him, well, no, you are now saying that because the rules of baseball or cricket, these are all just social conventions, right? So these are just based on the opinions of people. These are rules that are made by people. So those aren't objective, because if it would be objective, those rules would have existed, prior to humans. Those rules would still be true if humans didn't exist. But obviously, the rules of baseball and cricket, or rugby, football, these are all social conventions. These are all made and are based on the opinions of people. So that's why Craig pointed out to him, and he was making those faces that he was like, now you're confusing the difference of what objective and subjective means, and which is why Craig is pointing that out to him. Now, after Dr. William Lane Craig and Michael Ruse go on talking about after Craig points out how Michael Ruse is changing his position from this objective moral values and duties position to a subjective one, he again brings up another example, and again Dr. Craig points out to him, saying, like, again, you're confusing moral epistemology versus moral ontology. And then they get talking about free will and compatibilism, which I always found it a little interesting because I'll play the clip of where Dr. Michael Ruse talks about his views on compatibilism.
Can happen.
But you know that Presbyterians from Jean Calvin on have believed in predestination.
Yes.
And yet they all believe in free will. So come on, you've got to do a bit more hard work there. And of course, I, like many philosophers, starting with Hume, am a compatibilist. I see nothing wrong with saying everything's got cause and effect, but it doesn't mean to say you don't have dimensions of freedom, which are real.
Yes, I was talking about libertarian freedom, which I would affirm. I'm not a Calvinist or Presbyterian, but you're affirming compatibilist freedom, where, in fact, you're determined causally by factors outside yourself to do whatever you think and do, but you do it voluntarily. It's not as though you're dragged kicking and screaming into doing these things. But that just...
So now, again, the reason, you might think, like, why are you bringing, free will versus compatibilism into this topic? And, well, obviously, one, because they're talking about it, but also the implications of what compatibilism brings. Like, again, Dr. Craig pointed out, or, that Michael Ruse there talked about what compatibilism is, just that, there are cause and effects, and that those cause and effects determine your actions. Now, you still sort of have this freedom where, you're not, going against your will or anything like that. But then again, the reason, you ask, why is it that my desires are, these types of desires? And again, it would be because of those causes and effects. So you really don't have any freedom. And the implications, of that, as Dr. Craig pointed out, is that, you would be nothing more than a moist robot, where, because robots don't have any moral duties towards one another. They're just programmed to do. But another thing that, to me, that when I think about, not having freedom, libertarian freedom, in regards to morality and duties, is that if somebody, because I remember hearing some atheists talking about how these people who commit these heinous crimes, like, if they were to come and kill my whole family, I don't think that they should be put in prison, because after all, they didn't have a choice in the say. They were just determined to do so. And so I remember hearing that, and I was just like, that, I mean, like, I guess if it is true that we don't have any free will, and that we are determined by the causes and effects, then that person didn't have any choice in not murdering their families or committing heinous crimes. And so that is like a weird implication of compatibilism and determinism, which I think is just for me at least just about the same thing. But that's one of the reasons I just wanted to talk a little bit about it, just the implications of what really there not being any morals or duties, or at least culpability for somebody in a world where there's no libertarian freedom. Dr. Ruse kind of holds to. But anyways, that's all I have for this debate review. Again, I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can go watch it. And if anything, just watch it so you can see Dr. Craig's reaction to some of the points that Michael Ruse was making, because they are hilarious. But I hope this video was beneficial. Again, if you haven't watched the previous video that I made on the moral argument, go watch it. This is almost like a part 1.5, because I still have to make another video regarding the second premise of the argument. So you guys stay tuned for that. And again, if you haven't done so, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And you subscribing and hitting that bell icon, it really helps me out. Boosts the algorithm and all that YouTube stuff. So please make sure you do that. And if you have any comments or any things that you think I should have covered, then please let me know in the comments and I'll try to respond. But for now, that's all there is. You guys stay tuned for the next video. But until then, God bless.